The Pacific Ocean stretched endless and black beneath a sky just beginning to bleed orange at its edges. Commander Samantha Hartley's boots struck the wet sand in perfect rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 8 miles behind her, 2 more ahead. The cold November air burned her lungs with each inhale, and she welcomed it. Pain meant she was alive. Pain meant she was pushing. Pain meant she was still earning the right to wear what she wore. She ran alone, always alone at this hour. 4:30 in the morning on Coronado Beach, when the only witnesses were the waves and the distant lights of San Diego across the bay. This was her church, her confession, her daily reminder that excellence was not a destination, but a discipline. 30 years old, 8 years, a Navy SEAL. 4 combat deployments to places most Americans would never hear about. Missions that existed only in classified files that no one would ever read. And still, every morning she ran. Because the moment you stopped earning, it was the moment you lost the right to claim it. The trident tattoo on her left shoulder seemed to pulse with each stride. Eagle perched on anchor. Trident spear crossed with flintlock pistol. The mark that separated SEALs from every other warrior in the American military. Below it, inked in clean black letters, Team 3. Below that, 2017-2025. 8 years of her life condensed into ink and skin. 8 years of blood and sand and sacrifice. Her mind drifted as her body worked. This was the danger of distance running. The body found its groove, and the mind wandered into territory better left unexplored. She remembered Hell Week. The water had been 59 degrees, not cold enough to kill quickly, just cold enough to make every second feel like an hour. Day 4. No sleep in 96 hours. 200 candidates had started. 12 remained. Sam stood shoulder to shoulder with men twice her size, all of them shaking, all of them fighting the same enemy, not the instructors, not the cold, the voice in their own heads that whispered the same seductive lie. You can quit any time. Just ring the bell 3 times. The pain will stop. The bell sat on a post 50 feet away. Bronze, polished, waiting. 6 men had walked to it that day alone. 6 men who would spend the rest of their lives wondering what might have been. The instructor stood on the beach, dry and warm, megaphone in hand. His voice cut through the wind like a blade. "Hartley, you can quit any time you want. No one will think less of you. Just ring that bell and the pain stops. What do you say, Hartley?" Sam said nothing. She stared at the horizon where the first gray light was beginning to separate sky from sea. "Can't hear you, Hartley. You want to quit?" Still nothing. Just the sound of her own breathing. Just the feel of her own heartbeat. Just the knowledge that she had come too far to stop now. Then another voice, quieter, from behind her. "Don't look at the bell, Hartley. Look at the horizon. The sun's going to rise. You just have to survive until it does." She didn't turn around, didn't need to. She knew that voice. Captain Robert McKenna, the officer who had championed her application when half the command wanted to reject it. The man who had never once lowered a standard for her. Never once suggested she deserved special treatment. He simply demanded that she be better than everyone else, and then watched her do exactly that. "I'm not quitting, sir." "I know you're not. That's why I'm here." The sun rose 3 hours later. Sam was still standing, still shaking, still alive. She earned her trident 6 months after that. McKenna pinned it to her chest himself. "This symbol doesn't belong to you," he said. "You belong to it. It's a promise to those who came before and those who will come after. Be worthy of it, Hartley." "I will, sir." The memory faded as her phone buzzed against her hip. Sam slowed her pace, checked the screen. Colorado area code, number she didn't recognize. She answered anyway. "Hartley." Silence on the line. Then a voice she hadn't heard in 18 months. Weaker than she remembered, rougher. but unmistakable. "Sam, it's McKenna." She stopped running, stood still on the empty beach, waves lapping at her boots. "Admiral, I need you. One last time." The way he said it, one last time, not as a figure of speech, as a statement of fact. "Where?" "Colorado, Fort Carson. I'll send coordinates. Safe house 3 miles off base." "When?" "Yesterday. But tomorrow will have to do." Sam stared at the horizon. The sun was rising now, orange and gold spreading across the Pacific like spilled paint. "I'm on my way, sir." The line went dead. Sam stood motionless for a long moment, listening to the waves, feeling the cold wind on her face, knowing that something had just changed, something fundamental, something irreversible. Then she turned and ran back toward base. She had a long drive ahead. Chapter 2. The House of Secrets. 2 days later. Sam pulled her Honda Civic off a dirt road 3 miles outside Fort Carson, Colorado. The safe house sat at the end of a gravel driveway, half hidden by overgrown juniper bushes and a sagging wooden fence. Single story. Peeling white paint. The kind of place that looked abandoned until you noticed the fresh tire tracks in the mud and the faint glow of light behind drawn curtains. No military plates on her car, no base stickers, no indication that she was anything other than another face passing through the Colorado high country. She had dressed in civilian clothes, jeans, flannel shirt, hiking boots. Her military bearing was harder to disguise, but she did what she could. The morning air bit at her exposed skin. 42 degrees, thin atmosphere at 6,000 feet. The Rocky Mountains loomed to the west, their peaks already dusted with early snow. Sam approached the front door, knocked twice, waited. The door opened. Admiral Robert McKenna stood in the frame, and Sam felt something crack in her chest at the sight of him. He had aged a decade in 18 months. The robust 66-year-old she remembered had become a gaunt 68-year-old who leaned heavily on a wooden cane. His uniform hung loose on shoulders that had once filled it with authority. His face was lined with new creases. His eyes, though, his eyes were the same, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. Sam. His voice carried command despite everything. Some things, she realized, even time could not take away. "Come in." She followed him inside. The safe house smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. A folding table sat in the center of what had once been a living room. 2 metal chairs, a manila folder, nothing else. McKenna lowered himself into one chair with obvious effort. The cane took more weight than it should. Sam noticed how his hands trembled slightly as he set it aside. She didn't comment. He wouldn't want her to. "Sit." She sat. McKenna slid the folder across the table. No classification markings, no official seals. Just a folder that, technically, didn't exist. Captain Victor Rawlings, 42 years old, commands the Elite Tactical Leadership Program at Fort Carson, 18 years of service, Bronze Star, 2 deployments. Sam opened the folder. A service photo stared back at her. Square jaw, broad shoulders, eyes that held too much certainty. The look of a man who had spent his career proving something. "On paper," McKenna continued, "he's exactly what the Army wants in a training commander." "And off paper?" 3 formal complaints in the last 14 months, all from female personnel, harassment, hostile work environment, gender-based discrimination. McKenna's jaw tightened. All 3 complaints were filed. All 3 were buried. Sam flipped through the documentation. The complaints were detailed, specific, the kind of specificity that came from people who'd been keeping records because they knew nobody would believe them otherwise. One woman had resigned rather than continue serving under Rawlings. Another had requested immediate transfer. The third was still there, still documenting, still waiting for someone to listen. Why buried? Rawlings has friends, division level, people who think the military is getting too soft, too politically correct. They see complaints like this as noise. McKenna's voice hardened. "They're wrong." Sam studied the pages, dates, times, witnesses, everything a prosecutor would need, everything that had been ignored. "What do you need from me?" McKenna leaned forward. The movement cost him. She could see it in the tightening around his eyes. "I need proof, not allegations, not he said, she said. I need documented, witnessed, undeniable proof that Victor Rawlings creates a toxic command environment, and I need him caught in the act. You want me to go undercover? I want you to apply to his program as a transfer candidate. Clean file, sealed records, no rank visible, no name tape, just another applicant he thinks he can dismiss." McKenna's eyes held hers. "Show me how he treats someone he believes is vulnerable. Then show him who you really are." Chapter 3. The Debt of Honor. Sam closed the folder, looked at the Admiral, saw something in his face that went beyond professional concern. "There's more to this. Something you're not telling me." McKenna was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small photograph, worn at the edges, clearly handled many times over many years. He set it on the table between them. A young woman in army dress uniform smiled at the camera. Late 20s, dark hair, intelligent eyes. The kind of smile that made you believe the world might actually be a decent place. Captain Laura Dawson, intelligence officer, Fort Bragg, 10 years ago. Sam waited. She filed a harassment complaint against her commanding officer, detailed documentation, multiple witnesses. Airtight case. McKenna's voice dropped. Then she withdrew it. No explanation, just withdrew it and requested transfer. What happened? 6 months later, she put her service weapon in her mouth and pulled the trigger. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Sam looked at the photograph again, at the smile that no longer existed, at the potential that had been extinguished. I was a commander then. Different command, different base. I heard about the case secondhand. By the time I started asking questions, it was already closed, buried, just like everything else. You think Rawlings was involved? I think the officer Laura accused was transferred to Fort Carson 3 years ago. I think his name was Victor Rawlings. I think he's spent the decade since doing to other women what he did to Laura Dawson. McKenna picked up the photograph, held it carefully, reverently. Laura had a younger sister, Michelle. She goes by Mitch. She joined the Army because of Laura, wanted to honor her memory. His voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion she had ever seen from him. She's at Fort Carson now, intelligence specialist, assigned to Rawlings's program. She's been documenting his behavior for 6 months, alone, terrified, just like her sister was. Sam understood now. This wasn't just about accountability. This wasn't just about military justice. This was about redemption, about a debt McKenna had carried for 10 years. You want me to protect her. I want you to finish what Laura started. I want you to give her the justice she never got. I want you to make sure her sister doesn't end up the same way. McKenna set the photograph down. His hand trembled as he did. I'm dying, Sam. The words hit her like a physical blow. Cancer, diagnosed 8 months ago. Doctors give me 6 months. Maybe less if the treatment fails. Maybe a bit more if I'm stubborn. He met her eyes. No self-pity, no fear, just the cold assessment of a warrior facing his final enemy. I've spent 40 years serving this country. I've seen the best and worst of what the military can be, and I refuse to leave this world knowing that men like Rawlings still wear the uniform. Sam's throat tightened. She thought of all the mornings she had run on Coronado Beach, all the times his voice had echoed in her memory. Don't look at the bell. Look at the horizon. The sun's going to rise. I'll get you what you need, Admiral. I know you will. He reached across the table, gripped her hand with surprising strength. You're not just my best operator, Sam. You're my legacy. Everything I tried to build, Everything I believed in. It lives on in you." She gripped back, felt the bones beneath his skin, felt the years between them, felt the weight of everything he was asking. "I won't let you down, sir." "You never have." Chapter 4. Transformation. 20 minutes later, Sam stood in front of a cracked mirror in the safe house bathroom. The uniform McKenna had provided hung on a hook behind her. Army fatigues, ill-fitting, wrong branch, wrong service. The name tape read, "Hartley with nothing else." Single bar on the collar. Lieutenant. No unit patch. No deployment indicators. Nothing that would tell a story. She stripped off her civilian clothes. Stood for a moment in just her tank top. Looked at her reflection. 30 years old, 5'8", 145 pounds of functional muscle. Not the bulk of a bodybuilder. The lean efficiency of someone who had spent years learning to turn her body into a weapon. And there, on her left shoulder, visible in the fluorescent light, the trident. She traced it with her fingertips, remembered the day she got it, not at a tattoo parlor, in a barracks room at Coronado, surrounded by teammates, each of them marking themselves the way SEALs had for generations. The needle had been held by a senior chief with 30 years of service. His hands had been steady. His voice had been solemn. "This marks you forever. There's no taking it back, no hiding from it. From this day forward, you are responsible for everyone who wore it before you and everyone who will wear it after." She had nodded, accepted the pain, earned the ink. Now she would hide it. Sam pulled on the Army uniform, adjusted the fit as best she could, looked at herself again. She didn't look like a SEAL, didn't look like a warrior. She looked like exactly what Rawlings would expect. Just another transfer candidate, just another face to dismiss. Good. The drive to Fort Carson took 40 minutes. Sam used the time to review everything McKenna had given her. Victor Rawlings, born 1982, enlisted 2000, officer candidate school, 2004, steady progression through the ranks. Nothing remarkable, nothing exceptional, just competent enough to keep advancing, just connected enough to survive his mistakes. He had tried for the SEALs twice, failed both times. The first attempt ended on day 3 of Hell Week. Voluntary withdrawal. He rang the bell, walked away, spent the rest of his life pretending it never happened. The second attempt ended differently, made it to day 5, then got into a fight with another candidate. Something about a perceived insult, something about wounded pride. He threw the first punch, broke the other man's jaw, got pulled from training and reassigned. Conduct unbecoming. The official reason was that he wasn't physically ready. The real reason was that the instructors saw something in him they didn't like. Something dark, something dangerous. They were right. Sam passed through the gate with temporary credentials, identifying her as a training assessment candidate. The MP barely glanced at her ID. Just another transfer, just another body rotating through. Fort Carson sprawled across the Colorado terrain like a small city. 137,000 acres, 25,000 personnel, roads connecting everything to everything else. The mountains watched from the west, silent witnesses to decades of soldiers training for wars both remembered and forgotten. She parked outside the administrative building, checked her watch, E0853, 7 minutes early. The building was standard military construction. Concrete block painted beige, narrow windows, double doors with crash bars. A small sign indicated that the Elite Tactical Leadership Program offices were on the second floor. Sam sat in her car and watched. Personnel moved in and out, mostly male, a few female soldiers, but they moved differently. Faster, eyes down, shoulders hunched, the body language of people trying not to be noticed. She had seen it before. Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, anywhere women served in proximity to men who resented their presence. Sam pushed through the double doors. Inside, the building smelled like floor wax and burned coffee. A directory on the wall pointed toward stairs. She took them 2 at a time. Second floor. Hallway lined with office doors. most closed, one open at the far end, voices inside, male laughter that carried too much confidence. She walked toward the sound, each step measured, controlled. 8 years of training had taught her to move like water, silent, efficient, deadly when required. But today wasn't about stealth. Today was about being visible. The office was larger than standard. Someone had claimed extra space. 3 men stood inside, clearly waiting. They turned as she entered. Captain Victor Rawlings stood in the center. He was exactly what his photograph had promised: tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", broad through the shoulders in a way that suggested hours in the gym rather than hours in the field. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his boots shined to mirrors, his collar brass gleamed. Everything about him screamed someone who cared very much about appearances. To his left stood a younger man, late 20s, muscular in the lean way that came from functional training. His name tape read Tories, lieutenant bars on his collar. He carried his left shoulder slightly forward. Old injury, never quite healed right. Sam recognized the posture. She'd seen it before, somewhere. The memory wouldn't come. The third man was shorter, stockier, early 30s, sergeant stripes. Name tape read Garrett. He had the look of someone who had made rank through time and patience rather than exceptional performance. His position slightly behind Rawlings told her everything she needed to know about their relationship. All 3 were staring at her. Rawlings' eyes traveled from her boots to her face, slow, deliberate, the kind of scan designed to make someone feel small. "You're the applicant." Not a question, an accusation. Disbelief dripped from every syllable. Sam stopped 3 paces inside the door, feet shoulder width, hands behind her back. The position was automatic after years of standing before commanders, far more impressive than this one. "Yes, sir." Rawlings exchanged glances with Torres and Garrett. Something passed between them, amusement, contempt, the shared joke of men who had already decided she was beneath their notice. "You don't look like much." Sam said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Let him fill it. "Your file says you're a transfer candidate for the Elite Tactical Leadership Program." Rawlings began walking slowly around her, circling like a predator, assessing prey. "This program trains senior officers for advanced tactical command. It's physically demanding, mentally exhausting. Most candidates wash out in the first week." He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Too much of it, trying to project something he didn't possess. "So I'm going to ask you again. You're the applicant?" "Yes, sir." Torres shifted his weight. Garrett grinned. "Did Daddy pull strings for you, or did someone decide we needed to fill a diversity quota?" The words hung in the air. Designed to provoke, designed to humiliate, designed to make her react. Sam kept her face neutral. She had heard worse. In Bud-S, instructors had screamed things designed to break her. In combat zones, enemy fighters had shouted threats while she put rounds through their chests. Words were just sounds. They only had power if you gave it to them. "Sir, I'm here to complete the assessment. Nothing more." "Nothing more." Rawlings smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You hear that, gentlemen? She's here to complete the assessment. How ambitious." Torres and Garrett laughed on cue. The sound felt rehearsed, like they had played this scene before with other candidates who had walked through that door. Rawlings turned away, walked toward his desk, let the moment breathe, let her feel the weight of being watched, being judged, being dismissed. Then he turned back. "Let me tell you something, Lieutenant." His voice dropped lower, more intimate, more dangerous. "This program isn't for people who check boxes. It's for warriors, leaders, people who have earned the right to command elite units in combat." He moved closer. "Do you understand what that means?" "Yes, sir." "I don't think you do." He stepped into her personal space, using his height advantage, trying to make her feel small. Every instinct Sam had screamed at her to respond, to show him exactly what she was capable of, to teach him the cost of underestimating her. She stayed still, stayed calm, stayed invisible. Before we begin any assessment, I need to know if you can follow orders. Basic discipline, the foundation of military service. He paused. Let the words settle. Take off your jacket. The command landed like a physical blow, not because of what he asked, because of what it represented. Sam didn't move. Sir, I said take off your jacket. Rawlings' voice carried more edge now. You want to be in this program? You don't get to wear that uniform until you prove you're worth it, so take it off, now. The room went quiet. Torres watched with something that might have been discomfort. Garrett watched with obvious enjoyment. In the hallway, people had stopped moving, listening. This was the moment. The test within the test. Comply and submit to humiliation. Refuse and give him an excuse to dismiss her application. Sam let the silence hold for 3 seconds. 4, 5. Let the tension build. Let everyone in that room feel the weight of what was happening. Is that standard protocol, sir? Rawlings' jaw tightened. It is now. I give the orders here, Lieutenant. You follow them. That's how the military works. Or did they not teach you that wherever you came from? Sam considered her options, ran through scenarios in her mind, calculated outcomes. Then she made her decision. Chapter 7. The Trident Revealed. Yes, sir. Sam reached for her jacket, slowly, with the deliberate precision of someone who had spent 8 years learning to move with perfect control. 1 button, 2, 3, 4. She shrugged the jacket off her shoulders. Underneath, her tan t-shirt clung to her frame. Athletic, muscular in the way that came from functional training rather than aesthetics. Shoulders built by thousands of pull-ups, arms shaped by years of carrying heavy loads through hostile terrain. And there, on her left shoulder, visible through the thin fabric, unmistakable even from across the room, the trident. Eagle perched above anchor, trident spear crossed with flintlock pistol, the symbol of naval special warfare, the mark that separated SEALs from every other warrior in the American military. Below it, Team 3. Below that, 2017-2025, 8 years of service, written in ink and skin, impossible to fake, impossible to deny. Torres's mouth fell open, no sound came out. Garrett took a half-step backward. His grin vanished like smoke in wind. Rawlings had gone completely still. The color drained from his face like water from a broken vessel. His eyes fixed on the tattoo, unable to look away, unable to process what he was seeing. Sam held her jacket in her left hand. Let the moment breathe. Let every person in that hallway see what Rawlings had just stepped into. Then she spoke. Sir. You just told a Navy SEAL to strip. The words hit like a flashbang in a closed room. Every sound stopped. Every movement froze. The building itself seemed to hold its breath. Sam's voice remained quiet, calm, the kind of calm that came from spending years in situations where panic meant death. 8 years of service, SEAL Team 3, 4 combat deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, multiple classified operations that I'm not authorized to discuss and that you will never have clearance to know existed. She took 1 step forward. Rawlings didn't move, couldn't move. His desk blocked retreat. I've taken orders under enemy fire in Fallujah while dragging wounded teammates through buildings that were actively burning. I followed orders at 0300 in the Pacific Ocean during operations that don't exist on any map you've ever seen. I've executed classified missions in locations that will never appear in any briefing you'll ever attend. Another step. Close now. Close enough to see the sweat forming on Rawlings's upper lip. So, if you want to continue this performance, Captain, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. She paused. Let him feel the weight of what was coming. Because right now, you have exactly two options. You can conduct a legitimate assessment according to proper military protocol, or you can explain to Admiral Robert McKenna why you ordered a decorated naval special warfare operator with 8 years of combat service to undress in front of your subordinates. The name McKenna landed like artillery. Rawlings's face went from pale to gray. He knew that name. Everyone in special operations knew that name, and he knew exactly what it meant that this woman had spoken it. She hadn't just wandered in off the street. She had been sent. You... His voice came out strangled. Wrong. You're... Commander Samantha Hartley, SEAL Team 3, 8 years, currently on special assignment. She held up the jacket. Anything else you'd like me to remove, sir? Silence. Absolute. Complete. Devastating. Sam put the jacket back on, buttoned it with the same deliberate precision she had used to remove it, adjusted the collar, smoothed the fabric. Then she looked directly at Rawlings. Her eyes held his, refused to release them. Now, if this assessment is legitimate, I'd like to begin. If it's not, I have a very detailed report to file with Admiral McKenna, the Inspector General's office, and quite possibly the media about what happens when senior officers abuse their authority. Rawlings found his voice. It came out wrong, weak. The voice of a man who had just realized he was prey, not predator. We'll proceed with the evaluation. Outstanding. Sam's tone remained professional. No gloating. No triumph, just the flat efficiency of someone who had made her point and now expected compliance. Where's the first assessment station? Rawlings couldn't meet her eyes. Obstacle course, standard physical evaluation. Perfect. Sam turned toward the door, paused, looked back over her shoulder. Lead the way, Captain. And sir, I suggest we don't waste any more of each other's time. She walked out of the office. Heard the whispers starting behind her, felt the weight of dozens of eyes following her down the hallway. The word was spreading. That's a SEAL. Female SEAL. Did you see the trident? Did you see what just happened? Good. Let them talk. Let Rawlings wonder what else was coming. Let him spend the rest of the day looking over his shoulder, waiting for the next blow to fall. Because this was just the beginning. And by the time she was finished, Captain Victor Rawlings would learn exactly why you never, ever underestimate someone based on what you think you see. The Colorado sun climbed higher in the sky. The mountains watched in silence. And somewhere, in a safe house 3 miles away, Admiral Robert McKenna waited for news. Sam walked toward the training grounds. She had an assessment to complete and a legacy to protect. The walk from the administrative building to the training grounds took 8 minutes. Nobody spoke. Captain Rawlings walked ahead, his posture stiff, his stride mechanical. The confident swagger from his office had evaporated. In its place was something smaller, something wounded, the gait of a man who had just been ambushed in his own territory and was still trying to understand how it happened. Lieutenant Torres followed 3 paces behind, his eyes fixed on the ground. Sergeant Garrett brought up the rear, his earlier grin replaced by nervous silence. Sam maintained proper interval. Observed, calculated. Let them stew in their own discomfort. The training grounds occupied 5 acres of Colorado dirt at the eastern edge of the base. Obstacle course, firing range, combat training facilities. Everything the Army needed to test whether someone could handle physical and mental stress. Other candidates had gathered near the starting line, 15 men in PT uniforms, waiting for their assessment slots. They turned as the group approached, saw Sam in her ill-fitting fatigues, saw Rawlings's expression, saw the tension crackling between them like static electricity before a storm. The whispers had already arrived. That's her, the SEAL. Female SEAL. Did you hear what happened? Sam let them talk. Let the story spread. Let Rawlings feel the weight of 100 watching eyes. The obstacle course stretched before her like a sleeping serpent. 400 meters of carefully designed misery. 15 stations meant to break bodies and spirits in equal measure. She had run courses like this hundreds of times. Bud S had courses that made this look like a playground, but every course was different. Every course had its own rhythm, its own secrets, its own ways to punish the unprepared. Sam scanned the layout, memorized distances, calculated angles, identified the points where fatigue would be highest and focus would be lowest. That's where the traps would be. Master Sergeant Earl Patterson stood at the starting line with a stopwatch and clipboard. He was old in the way that certain soldiers became old, not diminished, concentrated. 58 years of life had carved away everything unnecessary and left only what mattered. His face was a topographic map of every conflict since Grenada. His hands were steady. His eyes missed nothing. Those eyes found Sam as she approached, traveled to her shoulder where the trident showed through her shirt. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, respect, the acknowledgement of one warrior to another. Ma'am. The single word carried more meaning than Rawlings' entire speech in his office. Sergeant. Patterson consulted his clipboard with professional detachment. Standard course. 15 obstacles. Average completion time is 3 minutes. Base record is 2 minutes 43 seconds, held by a ranger from 3rd Battalion. He looked up, met her eyes. You'll run on my whistle. Sam nodded, moved to the starting line, began her pre-run ritual, hamstrings, quads, shoulders, hip flexors, not because she needed to warm up, because it gave her time to observe. Torres had moved down the course, positioned himself near the mud pit. Something glinted in his hand, metal, a bar of some kind. Training equipment that should have been stored, not carried onto an active assessment course. Sabotage. Sam filed the information away, continued stretching. Let Torres think she hadn't noticed. Let them all think she was just another candidate going through the motions. The memory came unbidden. Bud S. First phase. Day 12. 200 candidates had become 63. The obstacle course had claimed 11 of them that week alone. Broken ankles, torn ligaments, shattered confidence. The instructor had stood at the starting line, stopwatch in hand, eyes like chips of obsidian. The obstacle course is not about strength. It is not about speed. It is about efficiency. Every movement must have purpose. Every action must serve the mission. Waste energy, and the course will break you. Conserve energy, and you'll have enough left to finish what matters. Sam had listened, learned, internalized. She had finished that course in the top 10% of her class, not because she was the strongest, because she was the smartest, because she understood that the real enemy wasn't the obstacles. The real enemy was the voice in your head that told you to panic. Patterson raised his whistle. Ready, ma'am? Sam settled into her starting stance. Weight forward, hands loose, eyes on the first obstacle. Ready. The whistle split the morning air. Sam exploded forward. Chapter 9. The Course. The first wall was 6 feet high. Most candidates approached it cautiously, gathered themselves, jumped and scrambled, lost precious seconds to hesitation. Sam hit it at full sprint. Right foot planted on the wall at hip height. Left hand grabbed the top edge. Core muscles engaged, one fluid motion, up and over, landed in a roll on the far side. Momentum carried her forward without breaking stride. 3.2 seconds. The tire run came next. 24 tires laid in a staggered pattern. The trap was going too fast and catching a foot. Sam had learned this lesson in her first week of Bud S. Ball of the foot only, never the heel, each step precise, rhythmic. Like a drumbeat that had been playing in her blood for 8 years. Left, right, left, right, left, right. Through in 14 seconds. The rope climb loomed ahead. 30 feet of thick manila rope hanging from a steel frame, 1.5 inches in diameter, rough enough to tear skin if you let it. Most people use their legs, wrapped the rope, climbed with their full body, safe, slow, predictable. Sam grabbed the rope with both hands and went straight up, hand over hand, pure upper body, no leg wrap. The muscles in her back and shoulders had been built through thousands of pull-ups, hundreds of hours of training, years of carrying wounded teammates through hostile terrain. She hit the top platform in 18 seconds flat. Below her, the entire course was visible. Torres was still near the mud pit, trying to look casual, failing. Rawlings watched from the observation point, arms crossed, face unreadable. Sam descended in controlled drops, handbrake technique, fast but safe, hit the ground and sprinted again. The next 6 obstacles passed in a blur of controlled violence. Monkey bars. Her hands found each rung without looking. Muscle memory guided her across. Dismount at the far end. No pause. 8-foot wall. Different technique than the 6-foot. Running jump. Fingers caught the top. Pull-up motion. Swing legs over. Drop and roll. Keep moving. Low hurdles. Explosive power from each landing. Clear each one with inches to spare. Form perfect. Loading the next jump before the current one was finished. Cargo net. 25 feet of rope webbing. The trick was finding the rhythm. Hand, foot, never stopping, never looking down. Balance beam. 4 inches wide, 20 feet long, 8 feet off the ground. Most candidates slowed down, spread their arms, wobbled their way across. Sam walked it like a sidewalk, quick, confident, trusting 8 years of training to keep her upright. Parallel bars, upper body again, swing, release, catch the next bar, swing, release, through in 6 seconds. Her breathing was elevated now. Heart rate climbing, lactic acid building in her muscles, but she was nowhere near her limit. Bud S. had taught her where her limit actually was. This wasn't even close. The mud pit waited. 20 meters of thick Colorado clay, brown, cold, viscous, ropes stretched across it at knee height. You had to crawl under, face in the muck, body sliding through filth. Most people went slow, tried to stay clean, tried to minimize contact with the freezing slop. Sam had crawled through mud in places where enemy fighters were actively shooting. A training pit was nothing. But Torres was waiting. He stood at the edge of the pit, metal bar in hand, positioning it across her path. Low enough to trip, high enough to cause injury. His face wore a grin that said he thought he was being clever. Sam ran toward him. 30 meters, 25, 20. Torres started to lower the bar into position. 15 meters, 10. Sam's boots pounded the dirt. Her breathing stayed steady. Her eyes never left the bar. 5 meters. At the last possible second, her boots locked. Full emergency stop. Dust exploded around her feet like a small detonation. She stopped exactly 6 inches from the bar. Perfect control. Torres's grin vanished. His eyes went wide. He had expected her to hit the bar at full speed, expected her to trip, expected to hear the satisfying sound of a body hitting the ground. Instead, she stood before him, not even breathing hard, her eyes boring into his like drill bits. Move. Torres stood frozen. The bar hung between them. I said, move, Lieutenant. Her voice was quiet, calm, the kind of calm that came from absolute certainty. The kind of calm that made strong men step backward without knowing why. Torres stumbled away from the pit. His hands opened. The bar clattered to the ground. Sam picked it up, held it for a moment. Let him see the weight of it. Let him imagine what would have happened if she hadn't stopped. Then she tossed it aside and dropped into the mud. She crawled fast, elbows driving, knees pushing, face inches from the surface. The cold slop pressed against her uniform, soaked through to her skin. None of it mattered. She emerged on the far side completely covered in brown muck. Didn't pause. Didn't wipe her eyes. Just kept running. The final obstacles blurred past. 10-foot wall, highest on the course. Running start, jump. Fingers caught the top. Muscle up. Over, drop, roll, sprint, low crawl under barbed wire. 50 meters of razor-sharp metal suspended 18 inches above the ground. She slithered through like a snake, belly in the dirt, shoulders scraping the wire but never catching. Final cargo net. Angled this time, 45 degrees. More about grip strength than technique. Hand over hand, foot over foot, up and over, down the other side. She crossed the finish line and stopped. Patterson stared at his stopwatch like it had personally betrayed him. "Ma'am." His voice carried disbelief and something else, something that sounded like awe. 2 minutes 9 seconds. The number hung in the air. Base record was 2:43. Sam had shattered it by 34 seconds. Nobody spoke. The 15 waiting candidates stood in stunned silence. Rawlings's face had gone pale. Torres looked like he might be sick. Patterson walked toward Sam slowly, stopped at attention, saluted. She returned the salute, mud still dripping from her uniform. "Outstanding run, ma'am. I've been timing candidates on this course for 12 years. Never seen anything like it." "Thank you, Sergeant." Sam turned toward Rawlings. Let him see her. Let him see what he was dealing with. "What's next, Captain?" Rawlings swallowed hard. His voice came out rough. "Firearms range, live fire evaluation. Outstanding. Lead the way." Chapter 10. The Lying Bullet. The firearms range occupied the eastern corner of the training complex. Standard military configuration, 50 meters to the target line, multiple firing positions, paper silhouettes on mechanical rails that could move in random patterns at varying speeds. The rangemaster was a master sergeant named Williams. 60 years old, gray hair cropped close, the weathered look of someone who had spent decades around weapons and respected them accordingly. Rawlings pulled him aside before Sam arrived. She watched from 30 feet away, couldn't hear the words, could read the body language. Rawlings giving instructions, Williams looking uncertain, then nodding. Sabotage attempt number 2. Williams returned with a rifle, M4A1 carbine, standard issue, 5.36 Gauss 45mm NATO. The weapon Sam had carried on 4 deployments, the weapon she knew better than she knew her own heartbeat. He handed it to her along with 3 magazines. "Standard qualification, ma'am, 50 meters, 10 moving targets, prone position, ready when you are." Sam took the rifle, ran her hands along the receiver, checked the chamber, clear, checked the magazine, loaded. But something was wrong. The weight was off. She ejected the magazine, examined the ammunition, brass casings, copper jackets. Everything looked normal, but the bullets were lighter than they should be. 55-grain full metal jacket instead of standard 62-grain, M855. Different weight meant different ballistics. The 55-grain rounds had a flatter trajectory at short range, but were more susceptible to wind drift. Point of impact would shift approximately 2.5 inches at 50 meters. They had switched the ammunition hoping she wouldn't notice, hoping her shots would miss, hoping they could claim she wasn't qualified. Sam looked at Rawlings. He was watching from the observation point, arms crossed, the ghost of a smile on his lips. He thought he had her. She almost felt sorry for him. Sam checked the wind. The flags along the range hung limp. No movement, no drift to calculate. The only variable was the ammunition weight. She made the mental adjustment. Aim point shifted 2 inches low and slightly left. Muscle memory would want to put the round center mass. She would have to override 8 years of training to compensate for their sabotage. She could do it in her sleep. Sam moved to the firing line, dropped into prone position. The rifle came to her shoulder like it had been born there, stock firm against her cheek, eye aligned with the rear aperture, front sight post centered on the first target position, breath in, half out, hold. The targets began moving, paper silhouettes on mechanical rails, random patterns, speed variations. The challenge wasn't hitting them. The challenge was hitting them consistently while managing a dozen variables simultaneously. Sam's finger moved to the trigger, sight alignment, sight picture, respiratory pause, squeeze. The rifle barked. First target dropped. She didn't pause. Smooth transition to target 2. Adjust for new position. Adjust for movement speed. Adjust for the lying ammunition. Breath. Squeeze. Drop. Target 3, 4, 5. Each round placed with surgical precision. Center mass. The way she'd been taught. The way she'd executed in places where missing meant teammates died. 6, 7, 8. Her breathing remained controlled. Heart rate steady. The rifle was just an extension of her will. Point. Fire. Target drops. Simple as thought. Natural as breathing. 9, 10. The final target fell. Silence. Williams walked downrange to examine the targets. He was gone for 2 minutes. When he returned, his face wore an expression somewhere between awe and disbelief. "Ma'am, 10 targets, 10 center mass hits, 0 misses." He shook his head slowly. "I've trained Olympic shooters, Secret Service marksmen, Delta operators. I've never seen shooting like that with ammunition that wasn't properly matched to the rifle." Sam safed the weapon, stood, handed it back. "Where did you learn to shoot like this?" Williams asked. "Bud-S. Then 4 combat deployments. Then 10,000 hours of practice because lives depend on accuracy, Sergeant." She looked at Rawlings. His smile was gone. In its place was something harder, something desperate. Williams leaned close to Sam, spoke quietly. "I know what they did with the ammunition. I documented it, wrote up a formal statement. That's not how we do things in my army." Sam met his eyes, saw the integrity there, saw the quiet courage of a man who had chosen honesty over convenience. "Thank you, Sergeant. Your integrity is noted." "What's next, Captain?" she called to Rawlings. His jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. "Hand-to-hand combat evaluation. You'll spar with Lieutenant Torres." Sam looked at Torres. He had gone pale. "Outstanding. Lead the way." Chapter 11. Blood and Recognition. The combat training facility was a 20 by 20 square of padded surface. Enough room to move, not enough room to run. The kind of space where skill mattered more than size and technique mattered more than strength. Torres stepped onto the mat. He was bigger than Sam, 6 inches taller, 50 pounds heavier, all of it muscle. The kind of physique that came from years of dedicated training. None of it would help him. A referee stood at the edge, captain from the provost marshal's office. She had been called in to observe, make it official, ensure everything was documented. Standard combatives rules. Tap out ends the match. Submission holds allowed. No strikes to the throat or groin. Fight until one combatant submits, or I call it. Sam tied her hair back into a tight ponytail, stepped onto the mat, felt the familiar give of the padding beneath her boots. Torres faced her. His stance was good, balanced, professional. He had been trained well. "Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Torres said. "Understood," Sam confirmed. "Begin." Torres charged immediately. It was the wrong move, telegraphed, desperate. The kind of attack that worked against amateurs who froze under pressure. Sam sidestepped. The movement was minimal, efficient, just enough to make him miss. As he passed, she grabbed his extended arm, twisted, used his own momentum against him. Torres's face hit the mat in 1.6 seconds. The crowd gasped. Sam held the armbar position, not locked, just controlled. Enough pressure to demonstrate dominance without causing injury. Again. She released him, stepped back. Torres got up slowly, breathing hard, embarrassed. The confidence he had worn in Rawlings' office was completely gone. He came in more carefully the second time. Better stance, lateral movement, feints, good technique, the kind of approach that showed real training. Sam matched his intensity, blocked his strikes with minimal movement, countered with measured force. They exchanged for 30 seconds, real sparring, technical, precise. Then Sam saw the opening. Torres dropped his right shoulder a fraction too much before throwing a hook, telegraphing the punch, showing her what was coming. She waited, let him commit. The hook came. Sam ducked under, got inside his guard, swept his leg. controlled his descent, landed on top with her knee on his chest. Perfect positioning, total control. "Stop!" Torres stared up at her, confusion in his eyes. "Your stance is solid, but you're dropping your right shoulder before you hook. Shows me what's coming. Fix it." She was teaching him, mid-fight. Instead of pressing her advantage, she was correcting his technique. "Try again." Sam stood, offered her hand. He took it. She pulled him up. They reset, circled. This time, Torres kept his shoulder level. The hook came cleaner, faster. Sam had to work harder to slip it. Better. Again. They sparred for 2 full minutes, the longest anyone had lasted against her. Torres improved noticeably as they went, following her corrections, adapting, learning. Finally, Sam decided to end it. She closed distance, got double underhooks, executed a picture-perfect judo throw. Torres hit the mat hard. Before he could recover, she had him in an arm triangle choke. Textbook position, perfect pressure. Tap. Torres's hand slapped the mat 3 times. She released immediately, rolled off, stood, offered her hand again. This time, when Torres took it, something had changed in his eyes. Not defeat, recognition. "Helmand Province." Torres's voice was quiet. The words came slowly, like he was pulling them from somewhere deep. 3 years ago. IED hit our convoy. Took shrapnel in my shoulder and leg. Couldn't move, couldn't fight. Taliban closing in. We were done. All of us knew it. Sam said nothing. Let him speak. Then someone came through the smoke. Female operator, face covered. No name tape, no unit insignia. Just appeared out of nowhere, like a ghost. His voice cracked slightly. She grabbed me by my vest and dragged me 50 meters through active fire. Bullets everywhere. RPGs, the whole world was exploding, and she just kept pulling. Didn't stop, didn't slow down. Got me to the medevac zone, saved my life. Torres met her eyes. I tried to thank her, tried to see her face, but she was already gone. Classified operation. No names, no records, just a ghost who appeared when I was going to die and then vanished. Beat. That was you. Sam held his gaze. That was me. Torres's legs seemed to weaken. He sat down heavily on the mat. You saved my life. And this morning I tried to sabotage your obstacle course run. I put that bar there. I was going to trip you on Rawlings's orders. His voice broke. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. Sam sat down across from him. Let the moment breathe. Let him feel the weight of what he'd done and what he'd learned. Why did you do it? Because I was afraid. Because Rawlings has power here. Because I thought following him was the safe play, the smart play. Torres shook his head. I was wrong. Yes, you were. How do I fix it? Sam studied his face, saw genuine remorse, genuine shame, the kind that came from someone realizing they had betrayed their own values. Tonight's exercise, Rawlings is going to try something, sabotage, false intel, something designed to make me fail. She leaned forward. When that happens, you have a choice. Follow him one more time, or stand for what's right. I'll stand with you. Don't promise that yet. Sam's voice was gentle but firm. Wait until you're actually in the moment. Wait until the pressure is real. Then decide. That's when it counts. Torres nodded slowly. Thank you, Commander, for everything, for Helmand, for today, for giving me a chance to be better. Sam stood, offered her hand one more time. Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. Thank me when you've earned it. Then we'll be even. Chapter 12. The Lost Sister. The women's locker room sat at the far end of the physical training complex. Concrete block construction, fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant and old sweat, 3 shower stalls, a row of metal lockers. 2 wooden benches worn smooth by years of use, empty except for one figure sitting hunched on the far bench. Lieutenant Michelle Dawson looked up as Sam entered. Recognition flashed across her face immediately. Everyone on base knew who Sam was now. The story had spread faster than wildfire, but there was something else in Mitch's eyes, something beyond curiosity or respect. Hope. The desperate hope of someone who had been fighting alone for a very long time. Commander Hartley. Just Hartley is fine. Sam moved to a locker, began stripping off her mud-caked uniform, let the silence settle. Let Mitch decide how much she wanted to share. You saw what happened today. Mitch's voice was quiet, careful. Everyone saw what happened today. Word travels fast on military bases. You made Captain Rawlings afraid. Mitch stood, crossed to her own locker. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. I've been here 14 months. I've watched him destroy careers, ruin lives. I've watched women resign rather than keep serving under him. And in one morning, you made him afraid. Sam pulled a clean shirt from her bag, said nothing, waited. Admiral McKenna told me you've been documenting 6 months of evidence. Mitch pulled a phone and a small external hard drive from her locker, held them like they were made of glass. 17 separate incidents, dates, witnesses, audio recordings when I could get them, everything I could gather without getting caught. She looked at Sam with eyes that had seen too much. I've been building this case because nobody else would, because every time someone reports him, the complaint disappears. He has protection. Friends at Division who think he's just old school, just tough, just maintaining standards. Her voice hardened. They're wrong. Sam sat down on the bench, gestured for Mitch to join her. Why did you stay? The others left. One resigned. One transferred. Why are you still here? Mitch was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice had changed. Softer, more fragile. The voice of someone about to share something they had carried alone for far too long. Because of my sister, Captain Laura Dawson, Army Intelligence, different base, 10 years ago. The name hit Sam like a physical blow. McKenna had told her about Laura, but hearing it from Mitch was different, more real, more painful. Laura was brilliant, top of her class at West Point, fast-tracked for promotion. Everyone said she would make general someday. Mitch's hands twisted together in her lap. Then she filed a harassment complaint against her commanding officer. What happened? She had documentation, witnesses, an airtight case. And then she withdrew it. No explanation. Just withdrew it and requested transfer. Mitch's voice cracked. 6 months later, she put her service weapon in her mouth and pulled the trigger. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Sam thought of the photograph McKenna had shown her, the young woman with the bright smile, the potential that had been extinguished. I was 16 when she died. I worshipped her, wanted to be just like her. When I got the news, Mitch wiped her eyes roughly. I joined the Army because of Laura. I wanted to honor her memory. I wanted to understand what happened to her. She pulled a worn folder from her locker, opened it with trembling hands. After she died, I got her personal effects, including her journal. She wrote everything, the harassment, the threats, how he said he'd destroy her career if she didn't withdraw, how his friends spread rumors about her, how they isolated her until she had no one left. Mitch held out the journal. Sam took it carefully, reverently. She was too afraid to write his full name, even in private. She used initials. Mitch's voice dropped to barely a whisper. VR. The letters burned in Sam's mind. VR Victor Rawlings. I came to Fort Carson because I heard rumors about a commander who handled female officers who stepped out of line. I wanted to find proof. I wanted to know if the man who destroyed my sister was still destroying others. Sam looked at the journal in her hands, thought of Laura Dawson writing in it late at night, documenting her own destruction, hoping someone would eventually read it, eventually understand. Rawlings transferred here 3 years ago, Mitch continued. Before that, Fort Bragg. Before that, Fort Hood. Every assignment, same pattern. Complaints filed, complaints buried, women transferred or discharged, and he keeps climbing. Sam closed the journal, met Mitch's eyes. Your sister deserved justice. She didn't get it, but you can still get it for her. That's why I've been documenting. That's why I stayed. That's why I'm still here, even though I'm terrified every single day. Tears streamed down Mitch's face now. She didn't try to stop them. I thought maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe Laura was too sensitive. Maybe it was our fault somehow. Sam reached out, took Mitch's hand. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't Laura's fault. The system failed her. The people who should have protected her failed her, and Victor Rawlings is going to answer for what he did. How can you be sure? Because Admiral McKenna sent me here specifically to make sure of it, and because your sister kept records even when no one believed her. That documentation is going to be the key to bringing Rawlings down. Sam stood, pulled Mitch to her feet. Tonight there's a live fire exercise. Rawlings is going to try something. I need you to keep documenting. Everything you see, everything you hear, times, witnesses. Can you do that? Mitch straightened, wiped her eyes. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. I've been doing it for 6 months. One more night won't break me. Good, because after tonight, everything changes. 1900 hours. Full dark. The Kill House complex sat at the eastern edge of Fort Carson, like a concrete tumor. Multiple buildings connected by corridors. Walls that could be reconfigured. Rooms that could become anything. The closest thing to urban combat the Army could create without actually going to war. Sam stood at the briefing area in full combat kit. Plate carrier with ceramic inserts, Kevlar helmet, night vision goggles mounted but raised, M4 loaded with blank ammunition. The weight was familiar, comforting. This was her element. Captain Rawlings stood before 6 soldiers, Torres, Garrett. 4 others Sam didn't know, all kitted up, all waiting. Tonight's exercise is a hostage rescue scenario. Rawlings' voice had recovered some of its authority, but his eyes kept darting to Sam, nervous, calculating. 6 casualties trapped in the building. Unknown number of enemy combatants. Your team will conduct tactical entry, clear the structure, extract the casualties. Time limit is 15 minutes. He paused. Let the information sink in. Commander Hartley, your team leader. Sam nodded once. Understood. Radio frequency is 34.5. I'll be in the observation tower providing tactical updates. Rawlings' lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Any questions? Rules of engagement? Treat all threats as hostile. Blank ammunition only. Role players will indicate hits by dropping. Casualties are marked with red tape. Extract them to the southern exit point. Clear. Sam turned to her team, gestured them closer. They formed a tight circle around her. Torres, your point man. First through every door. Trust your training. Torres nodded. His eyes held steady. Whatever crisis of conscience he'd experienced that afternoon had resolved into something harder, something more determined. Garrett, rear security. Nobody comes up behind us. Garrett's nod was reluctant. He was still Rawlings's man, but he would follow orders, for now. The rest of you, standard stack formation, maintain interval, communicate constantly. We move fast but careful. Speed matters, but not more than thoroughness. Miss one threat and people die. She looked at each of them in turn. We clear every corner, every closet, every shadow. Questions? Silence. Good, let's move. The team approached the southern entry point in tactical formation. Sam took position second in stack behind Torres. She could feel his tension. Adrenaline and fear mixed together. He wanted to prove himself, wanted to make up for the morning. She keyed her radio. Actual, this is ground team. Beginning entry now. Rawlings' voice crackled in her ear. Copy ground team. Proceed with caution. Torres kicked the door. It swung inward. Smoke poured out. Thick. artificial. Strobe lights flashed inside, simulating explosions. The disorientation was immediate, intentional, designed to test how soldiers performed when their senses were compromised. Move! Torres flowed through the door, rifle up. Sam followed. The team stacked in behind them. The first room was large, 20 by 30 feet. Multiple doors leading deeper into the structure, furniture scattered throughout. Perfect ambush terrain. Left door, Torres called. 2 role players dressed as enemy combatants emerged. Torres engaged, double tap each. Both dropped, indicating hits. Clear left. The team pushed forward, room by room. The smoke thickened. Visibility dropped to maybe 10 feet. The strobes made depth perception difficult. Everything felt disjointed, chaotic. This was the point. Train under stress. See how people performed when conditions degraded. Right corner, Garrett called from the rear. 2 more role players. Garrett engaged. Dropped them both. Good reaction time. Contact neutralized. They moved deeper, found casualties, extracted them. The work was methodical, precise. Sam called commands. The team executed. It felt almost routine, too routine. Sam's radio crackled. Rawlings's voice came through, urgent, almost panicked. Ground team, this is actual. Enemy reinforcements spotted Sector 3. Multiple hostiles moving to your position from the south. Abort extraction. Fall back to Rally Point Alpha immediately. Acknowledge. Sam stopped the team with a raised fist. Analyzed the information. Sector 3 was behind them, the direction they had entered from. If enemy reinforcements were coming from the south, they would be cut off from their exit point. Standard tactical response would be to fall back, regroup, reassess. But something felt wrong. The sound signatures didn't match. The kill house was designed to amplify noise. If hostiles were moving through Sector 3, she would hear footsteps, movement, breathing, silence. Sam moved to a window, looked towards Sector 3. The area was visible in ambient light from the observation tower. Empty. No movement, no thermal signatures from role players. Nothing. The intel was false. Ground team, did you copy? Rawlings' voice again, more insistent. Enemy reinforcement Sector 3. Abort extraction now. That is a direct order. Torres looked at Sam, questioning. The rest of the team waited. This was the moment. Trust chain of command or trust her own assessment. Sam keyed her radio. Actual ground team requesting confirmation on Sector 3 contact. I have no visual or audio confirmation of hostiles. Please verify. 3 seconds of silence. Then Rawlings' voice came back hard. Ground team, that is confirmed intelligence. Enemy reinforcements are moving on your position. You will abort extraction and fall back. That is a direct order from command. Acknowledge immediately. Sam looked at her team, all of them watching her, waiting to see what she would do. Torres especially. This was his moment too. The choice he had talked about that afternoon. Sam made her decision. Negative, actual. Your intelligence is faulty. I have clear line of sight to Sector 3. No hostile movement. No audio signatures. No thermal indication. We are proceeding with extraction as briefed. Ground team, you are disobeying direct orders. Rawlings' voice rose, lost its professional calm. I am ordering you to abort and fall back now. Sam reached up and switched off her radio. Complete silence. She turned to her team. That intel was fabricated, designed to make us fail. We have a clear path forward. 2 more casualties to extract. We complete this mission exactly as briefed. Garrett's face showed conflict. Commander, he's going to court-martial you for this. Let him try. Sam's voice was steel. Torres, you're still on point. Let's finish what we started. Torres's face showed no hesitation. Yes, ma'am. They pushed forward. 2 more rooms, found the final casualties, extracted them to the southern exit point. The whole operation took 11 minutes and 18 seconds, under the time limit. All casualties secured, 0 friendly losses. Mission success. The team emerged from the kill house into cool night air, breathing hard, adrenaline still pumping. Sam looked toward the observation tower. Rawlings was already storming down the stairs, his face purple with rage, and behind him, walking slowly through the darkness, was a figure with a cane. Admiral Robert McKenna had arrived. The final act was about to begin. The silent Trident Captain Victor Rawlings stormed across the training ground like a man possessed. His boots struck the dirt with furious intensity. His arms pumped at his sides. His face had gone from purple to something darker, the color of a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse around him. "You disobeyed direct orders!" His voice cracked across the night air like a whip, loud enough to be heard by every soldier within 200 meters, loud enough to ensure witnesses. "I gave you tactical intelligence. I commanded you to fall back. You ignored me. Shut off your radio. That's insubordination, dereliction of duty." Sam stood at attention, said nothing, let him rant. "I'm going to have you court-martialed for this. I'm going to end your career. You think that Trident protects you? You think being a SEAL means you can ignore the chain of command?" Rawlings was close now. Close enough that she could see the spittle flying from his lips. Close enough to smell his cologne mixed with the sour odor of fear sweat. "I'll have your commission. I'll have your Trident. I'll make sure you never wear a uniform again." Sam remained motionless, eyes forward, face neutral, the perfect picture of military bearing. Behind Rawlings, she could see figures emerging from the darkness. Torres, Patterson, Williams from the firing range, other soldiers who had witnessed the day's events, and walking slowly through them, leaning heavily on his cane, came Admiral Robert McKenna. The old warrior moved with deliberate purpose. Each step cost him something. She could see it in the tightening around his eyes, in the way his free hand trembled at his side, but he kept coming, because some things mattered more than pain. Beside McKenna walked two more figures, a woman in her 50s wearing the insignia of an inspector general's colonel, and a younger man in dress uniform carrying a briefcase. JAG lawyer, here to make things official. Rawlings was still ranting, still threatening, still completely unaware of what was behind him. "Think you can come into my program and disrespect my authority? You're nothing. You're a diversity hire with delusions of Captain Rawlings." McKenna's voice cut through the tirade like a blade through silk, quiet, controlled, carrying more authority in two words than Rawlings had managed in his entire career. Rawlings spun around, saw McKenna, saw the IG colonel, saw the JAG officer with his briefcase full of documents, the color drained from his face like water from a broken vessel. "Admiral McKenna, sir, I didn't know you were. Explain to me why you gave false intelligence during a live training exercise." The question was simple. The tone was devastating. Rawlings's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Sir, I was testing her ability to handle bad intel under pressure. It's a legitimate training technique. Standard practice for—" "Is it?" McKenna stepped closer. The cane tapped against the ground with each step, punctuation marks in a sentence of accusation. "And does this legitimate technique involve lying to your subordinates, fabricating enemy positions, attempting to force tactical errors that could have resulted in mission failure?" "Sir, I've been in the observation tower since 1900 hours, Captain. I heard every transmission, watched every decision." McKenna's eyes were steel. "You fed Commander Hartley false intelligence specifically designed to make her abort a successful mission. When she correctly identified your intel as faulty and proceeded with extraction, you attempted to intimidate her into compliance through threats of court-martial." Rawlings looked around wildly, searching for allies, finding none. The soldiers who had gathered formed a loose circle, witnesses to whatever came next. Torres stood with his arms crossed, his face hard with determination. Patterson had positioned himself near the JAG officer, a folder in his hands. Even Garrett had stepped away from his former mentor, putting distance between himself and the coming storm. "This is—" Rawlings' voice cracked. "This is entrapment. You set me up." "No." McKenna shook his head slowly. "We gave you every opportunity to be the officer you should have been. Every scenario was legitimate. Every test was standard. You chose to harass. You chose to sabotage. You chose to threaten." He stepped even closer, close enough that Rawlings could see every line on his weathered face, every year of service etched into his skin. "Those were your choices, Captain. Nobody made them for you." Master Sergeant Earl Patterson stepped forward. His posture was ramrod straight. His voice carried the weight of 30 years of service and the clarity of a man finally unburdening his conscience. "Admiral, I've been at this base 12 years, served under 4 commanders of this program. None of them ever ordered me to sabotage a candidate's ammunition. None of them ever created false intelligence to trap someone into failure." He held up the folder he'd been carrying. "But there's something else, something from a long time ago." Patterson's eyes found Rawlings, held them, refused to look away. 10 years ago, I was stationed at Fort Bragg. There was an investigation into a captain accused of harassment. A female intelligence officer named Laura Dawson had filed formal complaints, detailed documentation, multiple witnesses, an airtight case. Sam felt her breath catch. Beside her, she sensed Mitch Dawson emerge from the gathered crowd, moving closer, listening. "I was called as a witness because I'd seen things, interactions that weren't right, comments that crossed lines." The way he looked at her when he thought nobody was watching. Patterson's voice hardened. "But before I could testify, Captain Dawson withdrew her complaint. The investigation was closed. Case dismissed." He turned to face McKenna directly. "The officer being investigated was Captain Victor Rawlings, and 6 months after Laura Dawson withdrew her complaint, she put a gun in her mouth and pulled the trigger." The words fell into the night like stones into still water, ripples spreading outward, touching everyone who heard them. Rawlings had gone pale, not the pale of embarrassment, the pale of a man watching his entire life unravel before his eyes. That's ancient history. There was an investigation. I was cleared." "You were cleared because the witness withdrew." Patterson's voice was ice. "I've wondered for 10 years why she did that. What pressure was applied? What threats were made? I've carried that guilt for a decade, Admiral. The guilt of not speaking up when it mattered." He straightened even further. "I'm speaking up now." Lieutenant Michelle Dawson stepped forward. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice was steady. The voice of someone who had been preparing for this moment for years. "Laura Dawson was my sister." She held up the worn journal Sam had seen in the locker room. "This is her journal. She wrote everything. The harassment, the intimidation, how he told her that if she didn't withdraw her complaint, he would destroy her career, how he had friends who would make sure no one believed her, how they isolated her until she had no one left." Mitch opened the journal to a marked page. She was too afraid to write his full name, even in her private journal, even when she thought no one would ever read it. She used initials. Her voice broke. "VR." She looked directly at Rawlings. "You destroyed my sister. You took everything from her, her career, her confidence, her will to live, and then you walked away and kept climbing, kept doing to other women what you did to her." Mitch held up her phone, an external hard drive. "I've been documenting your behavior for 6 months, 17 separate incidents, dates, times, witnesses, audio recordings, everything Laura tried to gather before you silenced her." She stepped closer to Rawlings, close enough that he flinched backward. "You didn't silence me, and now the whole world is going to know what you are." Lieutenant Nathan Torres stepped forward. "Sir." "Lieutenant Nathan Torres." This morning, on Captain Rawlings' direct orders, I placed a metal bar across the obstacle course to trip Commander Hartley. I also participated in the ammunition switch at the firing range. His voice cracked slightly, but he kept going. I was wrong. I followed orders I knew were wrong because I was afraid, because Rawlings had power, because I thought going along was safer than standing up. Torres looked at Sam. Something passed between them. Recognition, gratitude, the acknowledgement of a debt that could never fully be repaid. Commander Hartley saved my life 3 years ago in Helmand Province, dragged me 50 meters through enemy fire when I couldn't walk, and I repaid her by trying to sabotage her assessment. He turned back to McKenna. I request permission to submit a formal statement and testify at any investigation or court-martial proceedings. I'll tell them everything. Every order Rawlings gave, every conversation I overheard, everything. McKenna nodded slowly. Permission granted, Lieutenant. Your courage is noted. Sergeant Garrett said nothing, did nothing. He remained at the edge of the crowd, eyes on the ground, shoulders hunched. When Colonel Winters looked his way, he turned and walked into the darkness, away from the reckoning, away from accountability. He would resign his commission 3 days later, quietly, without ceremony, the kind of ending reserved for men who lacked the courage to stand up and the honesty to confess. Not everyone found redemption. Not everyone chose the hard right over the easy wrong. Some people just disappeared and were forgotten. Colonel Diana Winters stepped forward, Inspector General's office, 25 years of investigating military misconduct. She had seen everything: corruption, abuse, cover-ups that went all the way to the top. Nothing surprised her anymore, but even she seemed affected by what she had witnessed tonight. Captain Victor Rawlings. Her voice carried the formal weight of official proceedings. By order of the Fort Carson Commanding General, and with authorization from Division, you are hereby relieved of command of the Elite Tactical Leadership Program, effective immediately. Rawlings swayed on his feet. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. You are suspended from all duties pending Inspector General investigation. Formal charges are being filed under Article 92, failure to obey order or regulation. Article 93, cruelty and maltreatment. Article 134, conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline. Colonel Winters paused. Let the weight of the charges settle. Additional charges are pending related to the falsification of records in the investigation of Captain Laura Dawson 10 years ago, and based on testimony we've received tonight, potential charges related to witness intimidation and obstruction of justice. The JAG officer opened his briefcase, removed a sheaf of documents, held them out to Rawlings. You have 72 hours to respond to these charges. Your security clearance is suspended. Your access to training facilities is revoked. You will report to the installation commander's office at 0800 tomorrow. Rawlings took the papers with trembling hands, stared at them without seeing. Do you understand these orders? A long silence, then barely audible, yes. 2 military police officers stepped forward from the crowd. They didn't handcuff Rawlings, didn't need to. They simply positioned themselves on either side of him. An escort, a reminder that he was no longer in command of anything. Rawlings walked away between them, his career ending with each step, his reputation crumbling with each passing second. Sam watched him go, felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just the quiet certainty that something necessary had been accomplished. Justice was rarely sweet, but it was always necessary. The crowd dispersed slowly, quietly, processing what they had witnessed, understanding that something fundamental had shifted in their world. McKenna remained, leaning on his cane, looking older than he had that morning. Older than he had any right to look. Walk with me, Sam. They moved away from the training grounds, away from the lights and the witnesses and the aftermath of Rawlings's destruction, into the darkness at the edge of the base where the Colorado stars spread across the sky like scattered diamonds. McKenna stopped near a low stone wall, lowered himself onto it with obvious effort. The cane clattered against the rock as he set it aside. Sam stood before him, waiting, knowing that something else was coming, something beyond the mission, beyond Rawlings, beyond everything they had accomplished tonight. "You did good work today, Sam." "I did what you trained me to do, sir." "More than that." McKenna looked up at her. In the starlight, his face was a map of shadows and lines. "You gave those soldiers something to measure themselves against. You showed them what strength actually looks like. Not cruelty, not intimidation, just quiet competence and unshakable integrity." He was silent for a moment, gathering himself for what came next. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have said this morning at the safe house. Something I've been carrying for months." Sam felt her chest tighten. She knew what was coming, had known since she first saw him leaning on that cane, since she first noticed the tremor in his hands and the new hollows in his cheeks. "The cancer." "Yes." McKenna nodded slowly. "Diagnosed 8 months ago. Aggressive. The kind that doesn't negotiate, doesn't compromise. Just takes and takes until there's nothing left to take." His voice was steady. No self-pity, no fear, just the calm acceptance of a warrior facing his final enemy. "Doctors gave me 6 months when they found it. That was 8 months ago. I've been living on borrowed time ever since." "How long?" 6 months. Maybe less if I'm unlucky. Maybe a bit more if I'm stubborn." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I've always been stubborn, but the treatment stopped working 2 weeks ago. Now it's just a matter of managing the pain and making peace with what's coming." Sam felt something break inside her, not shatter, just crack, letting in a grief she had been holding at bay since she first received his call. "Sir, don't." McKenna held up a hand. "Don't apologize. Don't offer condolences. I've had 40 years of service, 4 wars, countless missions. I've lived more life than most people could imagine. There's nothing to feel sorry about." He looked up at the stars, his eyes reflecting pinpoints of light. "Do you know why I called you to Colorado, Sam? Why I chose you for this mission instead of someone else? Someone younger, maybe. Someone with less to lose? To complete what you started with Laura Dawson, to get justice for her and protect her sister. That's part of it, but not all of it." McKenna reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small photograph, the same one he had shown her in the safe house. Laura Dawson with her bright smile and her unlived future. "I failed Laura. Failed to protect her when she needed it. Failed to follow up when my instincts told me something was wrong. I've carried that failure for 10 years. It's the one mission I never completed." He looked at Sam. But this mission wasn't really about Laura, or Rawlings, or even Mitch. Then what was it about? McKenna smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him in months. "It was about you, Sam, about making sure my legacy was complete before I'm gone." "I don't understand, sir." "Then let me explain." McKenna gestured for her to sit beside him on the wall. She did, felt the cold stone through her uniform, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. "When I championed your application to Bud S 9 years ago, half the command thought I was crazy. They said women didn't belong in special operations, said you'd wash out in the first week, said I was risking my reputation on a political statement." He shook his head. "They were wrong. You proved them wrong. Not by being given special treatment, not by having standards lowered, by being better than everyone else, by earning every single thing you achieved." His hand found hers in the darkness, gripped it with surprising strength. "You are my legacy, Sam, not my medals, not my rank, not my decades of service. You, and the soldiers you'll train, and the soldiers they'll train. That's what matters. That's what lasts." Sam felt tears building behind her eyes, fought them back, failed. "Sir, I'm dying." McKenna's voice was gentle now, softer than she had ever heard it. "There's nothing either of us can do about that. But before I go, I needed to know that everything I built, everything I believed in, would continue after I'm gone." He squeezed her hand. "Tonight you showed me that it will. You faced Rawlings without anger or vengeance. You gave Torres a chance to redeem himself. You protected Mitch when she needed protection. You did everything right, Sam. Everything I taught you." McKenna released her hand, reached into his pocket again, pulled out something small and metallic, a trident pin, gold, worn smooth by years of handling. "This was mine. Earned it in 1985, wore it every day for 40 years. It's seen more missions than I can remember, more battles than any single piece of metal should have to witness." He held it out to her. "I want you to have it." Sam stared at the pin, at the eagle and anchor and trident that represented everything she had spent her life becoming. "Sir, I can't." "You can, and you will." McKenna pressed it into her palm, closed her fingers around it. "Not as a gift, as a responsibility. When you look at this, I want you to remember what it represents, not just the missions, the people. The ones who wore it before us and the ones who will wear it after." He held her closed fist in both of his hands. "Train them right, Sam. Demand excellence. Accept nothing less. But also teach them that strength without honor is just violence. That real leadership means taking responsibility, not dodging it. That the trident is not about what you can do, it's about who you are." Sam looked at the old warrior before her, saw the man who had stood beside her in the cold water of Bud S., who had pinned the trident to her chest when she earned it, who had believed in her when no one else did. "I will, sir. I promise." "I know you will." McKenna smiled again, tired, peaceful, ready. "That's why I chose you." The Fort Carson courthouse stood gray and imposing against the winter sky. Inside, the court-martial of Captain Victor Rawlings had reached its conclusion after 6 weeks of testimony. Witnesses had come forward from across his career, women he had harassed, officers he had intimidated, subordinates he had threatened. The pattern was clear, undeniable, devastating. Patterson testified about what he had witnessed at Fort Bragg, about the investigation that was shut down, about 10 years of silence that had haunted him every single day. Mitch Dawson testified about her sister, read passages from Laura's journal, let the courtroom hear the voice of a woman who had been silenced too long. Torres testified about the sabotage attempts, the false intelligence, the culture of fear that Rawlings had cultivated, and Sam testified about everything that happened on November 13th, the order to strip, the obstacle course, the ammunition switch, the fabricated enemy contact. When she finished, there was nothing left to say. The verdict came down on a Tuesday morning, guilty on all charges, reduced to pay grade 01, the lowest commissioned rank, 18 years of climbing erased in a single ruling, dishonorable discharge, the worst possible separation from military service, a permanent mark that would follow him for the rest of his life. No pension, no benefits, no honor. Additional civil charges pending for his role in Laura Dawson's death. The district attorney was preparing a case for criminal witness intimidation. Victor Rawlings would likely spend the next several years in courtrooms explaining himself. And when that was over, if it was ever over, he would face a world that knew exactly what he was. Sam sat in the gallery as the verdict was read, watched Rawlings's face crumble as each word landed, watched the MPs lead him away in handcuffs this time. Mitch sat beside her, holding Laura's journal, crying silently. "It's over," Mitch whispered. "After all these years, it's finally over." Sam put her arm around the younger woman. "Let her cry." "Not over," Sam said quietly. "Just beginning. Your sister's story is going to change things, the way complaints are handled, the way women are protected. Laura's voice is finally being heard. Mitch straightened, wiped her eyes one final time. They're using Laura's case to rewrite the handbook. Every base, every branch. New protocols for handling complaints. New protections for witnesses. Her name will be on the policy document. Sam nodded. A legacy worth having. The best kind. The kind that protects people who can't protect themselves. Mitch looked down at the journal in her hands, ran her fingers across the worn leather cover. I'm being promoted, Captain, and transferred to the Inspector General's office, special assignment reviewing harassment reporting procedures, Army-wide. Her voice strengthened with each word. They want to use Laura's case as an example of systemic failure. They want to make sure it never happens again. Her name will be in the training materials. Her story will be told. Sam looked at the young woman beside her, saw the 16-year-old who had lost her sister, saw the lieutenant who had spent 6 months documenting abuse alone, saw the captain she was becoming. Your sister would be proud. I hope so. Mitch closed the journal, held it against her chest one final time. I hope wherever she is, she knows. She knows it mattered. That she mattered. She mattered. She always mattered. And now the whole world knows it. Outside the courthouse, the winter sun broke through the clouds. Light spilled across the Colorado landscape like a benediction. Justice had been served. But Sam knew better than to think the work was done. It was never done. 6 months later, Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, California. The morning sun painted the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and amber. Waves rolled against the beach in endless rhythm. The smell of salt and sea filled the air. Lieutenant Commander Samantha Hartley stood before a class of 30 SEAL candidates. They sat on the sand in neat rows, exhausted, soaked, covered in a mixture of mud and sweat and Pacific brine. Third day of Hell Week. 162 candidates had started. 47 remained. Among them were 5 women, the highest number in SEAL history. And among those 5 was Petty Officer 3rd Class Jennifer Reyes, 23 years old, daughter of a Marine who had served in Fallujah, granddaughter of a soldier who had fought in Vietnam, 3 generations of service running through her veins. She was struggling. Sam could see it in the way she held herself, in the tremor of her hands, in the 1,000-yard stare that came from pushing past every limit the body thought it had. But she was still there, still sitting in the sand with the others, still refusing to ring the bell. Also among the candidates sat Nathan Torres. His inter-service transfer had been approved 3 months ago, Army to Navy. He had started Bud S with a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. Now, on day 3, the chip was gone, replaced by the pure focus of someone who understood exactly how hard this was going to be. Sam looked at all of them, saw echoes of herself. 9 years ago, she had sat in that same sand, felt that same exhaustion, heard that same voice whispering that it would be so easy to quit. On the wall behind her hung 2 photographs. The first showed Admiral Robert McKenna in his dress whites, chest covered in ribbons, eyes sharp with the intelligence and integrity that had defined his entire career. Below it, a plaque read, Admiral Robert J. McKenna, 1957-2025. Strength without honor is just violence. He had died 2 weeks ago, peacefully, in his sleep, surrounded by family. Sam had been at his bedside, holding his hand when he took his last breath, feeling the grip weaken and then release. He had smiled at the end, said one word, worthy. The second photograph showed a young woman in army dress uniform, bright smile, intelligent eyes, Captain Laura Dawson, forever frozen in the moment before everything went wrong. Mitch had sent the photograph, asked Sam to hang it where candidates could see it, as a reminder of why integrity mattered, why speaking up mattered, why protecting each other mattered. Sam had agreed. Some legacies were carved in stone, others were carried in the hearts of those who remained. Both kinds mattered. Sam walked among the candidates, Her boots left prints in the wet sand. The morning light cast her shadow long and thin across the beach. "You're here to learn how to be warriors." Her voice carried across the sand. Quiet but clear. The voice of someone who had earned the right to speak. "But I'm going to teach you something more important. How to be leaders. How to maintain honor when no one is watching. How to speak truth when silence is easier. How to protect your teammates, even when they're no longer with us." She stopped in front of Reyes. The young woman looked up, exhausted beyond measure, but still present, still fighting. "The trident you're trying to earn is not about what you can do. It's about who you are. It's a promise. To the ones who came before, to the ones who will come after, to yourself." Sam reached into her pocket, felt the worn gold of McKenna's trident pin, the one he had given her that night in Colorado. "The man who trained me died 2 weeks ago. He served this country for 40 years, fought in 4 wars, earned every honor the military could give. But you know what he told me at the end?" She looked out at the ocean, at the endless blue that stretched to the horizon. "He said his legacy wasn't his medals. It wasn't his rank. It was the people he trained, the ones who would carry forward what he taught, the ones who would teach others, and the ones they would teach after that." Sam turned back to the candidates. "That's what the trident means. Not individual glory, continuous service. Each of us a link in a chain that stretches back generations and forward into a future we'll never see." She met Torres's eyes, saw him nod slightly. Understanding. "Some of you won't make it. That's okay. This life isn't for everyone. But those of you who do, those of you who earn the right to wear what I wear, you'll carry a responsibility that goes beyond yourself, beyond your career, beyond your lifetime." Sam walked back to the front of the formation. "Now get up. We have work to do." Later that day. Dusk. The candidates had been dismissed to their barracks for 4 hours of precious sleep before the night evolution began. The beach was empty except for Sam. She stood at the waterline, boots in the surf, watching the sun sink toward the Pacific. In her hand, she held McKenna's trident pin, turned it over, felt the weight of it, the history. Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn, knew who it was. Torres came to stand beside her. He was steady on his feet despite 72 hours without real sleep. The training was working, breaking him down to build him back stronger. "How are you holding up, Lieutenant?" "Still standing, ma'am. That's all I can ask for right now." Sam nodded. Let the silence stretch. "Can I ask you something, Commander?" "Ask." Torres looked at the sunset, at the golden light spilling across the water. "That night in Colorado, when you refused to follow Rawlings's false intel, when you turned off your radio and kept going, were you scared?" Sam considered the question, felt the weight of honest answer it deserved. "Yes, I was scared. Scared of being wrong. Scared of what would happen to my career if Rawlings' information turned out to be accurate. Scared that I was making a mistake that would cost me everything I'd worked for." She looked at Torres. "But I was more afraid of being the kind of person who follows bad orders because following them is easier than standing up. That fear was bigger. So I made my choice." Torres nodded slowly, processing. "How do you know? In the moment, when everything's happening fast and there's no time to think, how do you know which fear to listen to?" "You don't. Not always. You just do the best you can with the information you have and the values you've built, and then you live with the consequences." Sam held up the trident pin, let the fading sunlight catch its golden surface. "This symbol doesn't make those decisions easier. It just means more people are counting on you to make them right. More history on your shoulders. More responsibility." She looked at Torres. "Are you sure this is what you want? It's not too late to ring out. Go back to the Army, have a perfectly honorable career without any of this." Torres shook his head. 3 years ago, I was dying in a ditch in Helmand Province. You pulled me out, saved my life, didn't ask for thanks, didn't ask for recognition, just did what needed to be done and disappeared. His voice steadied. I want to be that person. The one who shows up when everything's going wrong. The one who does what's right when it would be easier to do nothing. If that means 3 more weeks of this. He gestured at the beach, the barracks, the brutal training that awaited. Then that's what it takes. Sam studied his face, saw something there that hadn't been present 6 months ago. Strength, clarity, purpose. Okay then. She tucked the trident pin back into her pocket. Get some sleep, Lieutenant. Tonight's going to be long. Torres turned to go. Stopped. Commander, thank you for giving me a second chance, for believing I could be better than I was. Sam looked at him, at the man he was becoming. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've earned your trident. Then we'll be even. Torres smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him since Bud S began. Yes, ma'am. He walked away toward the barracks, strong, determined, another link in the chain. Sam stood alone on the beach. The sun touched the horizon, began to sink below. The sky exploded in shades of orange and red and purple, a masterpiece that would last for minutes and then be gone forever, just like everything else. She thought about McKenna, about his final word, worthy. She thought about Laura Dawson, about a bright smile silenced too soon. She thought about Mitch, now Captain Dawson, working to change the systems that had failed her sister. She thought about Torres, fighting through Hell Week to become something more than he was. She thought about Reyes and the other female candidates, following a path she had helped carve through hostile territory. She thought about all the ones who would come after, the ones who would learn from her the way she had learned from McKenna, the ones who would carry the trident forward into futures she would never see. The sun slipped below the horizon. The colors faded. Stars began appearing in the darkening sky, the same stars that had watched over Coronado for thousands of years, the same stars that would watch over it for thousands more. Sam pulled McKenna's trident pin from her pocket one last time, held it up against the emerging starlight. I'm still here. Admiral, she said softly, still earning it, still passing it on. The metal was warm in her hand, alive with history and meaning and responsibility. She pinned it to her chest, over her heart, where it would stay until she passed it to someone else, the way McKenna had passed it to her, the way it had been passed for generations before them. The chain continued, link by link, generation by generation, each one building on what came before, each one creating foundation for what came after. That was the meaning of the trident. That was the meaning of service. That was the meaning of legacy. Sam turned away from the ocean, walked back toward the training center. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new candidates to push, new lessons to teach, but tonight she would rest. And tomorrow she would rise again, just as she had been taught. Just as she would teach others, just as they would teach the ones who came after, forever rising, forever serving, forever worthy. Behind her, the Pacific Ocean rolled eternal against the California shore. Above her, the stars wheeled through their ancient patterns. And somewhere in the darkness, the spirit of every seal who had ever lived watched over those who remained. The mission continued. It always continued, because that's what warriors did. They endured, they adapted, they overcame, and they made sure the next generation could do the same.